Deir Yassin Massacre, 1948. On April 9, 1948, around 120 fighters from the Irgun and Lehi Zionist paramilitary groups attacked the village of Deir Yassin near Jerusalem. A contemporary British government report described it as another brutal and appallingly cruel outrage, with preliminary reports indicating that over 100 villagers, including women and children, were killed. The attack caused panic and contributed to the exodus of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs during the war. Al-Dawayima Massacre, 1948. On October 28, 1948, Israeli forces captured the village of Al-Dawayima near Hebron. Historian Ilan Pappé described it as the worst episode in the annals of Nakba atrocities. A UN report later noted, the massacre was in some respects more brutal than Deir Yassin, with an estimated several hundred civilians killed by the IDF's 89th Battalion, which included former Irgun and Lehi members. Kibbutz Massacre, 1953. On October 14, 1953, an Israeli Special Forces unit, Unit 101, commanded by Ariel Sharon, attacked the Jordanian village of Kibbutz. The unit blew up over 40 homes, a school, and a police station. A UN observer reported that bullet-riddled bodies near the doorways indicated that the inhabitants had been forced to remain inside until their homes were blown up over them. 69 civilians, two-thirds of them women and children, were killed. The UN Security Council condemned the attack. Kafr Qasim Massacre, 1956. On the eve of the Suez War, Israeli border police imposed a curfew on Arab villages near the Jordanian border. Villagers returning from work unaware of the new curfew were shot dead. In total, 49 civilians, including 23 children and 6 women, were killed. An Israeli court later found the order to shoot civilians was blatantly illegal, convicting several officers. In 2007, President Shimon Peres formally apologized for the massacre. Prisoner executions in the Six-Day War, 1967. Allegations have persisted that Israeli forces killed Egyptian prisoners of war during and after the 1967 conflict. In 2010, an Egyptian newspaper published testimonies from Bedouin witnesses claiming to have seen Israeli troops shoot dozens of Egyptian soldiers who had surrendered, and that mass graves exist in central Sinai. Destruction of villages in the West Bank, 1967. After the war, Israel demolished 3 Palestinian villages near Latraun, Imwas, Yalo, and Beit Nuba, forcibly transferring their approximately 10,000 residents. A UN committee later documented the complete destruction of numerous other villages and stated that Israel was carrying out policies aimed at preventing the population from returning to their homes. Civilian displacement from the Gaza Strip after the war. Following the 1967 war, an estimated 280,000 to 325,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled from the occupied territories, including the Gaza Strip. Many of these were refugees who had already been displaced in 1948. Sabra and Shatila Massacre, 1982. From September 16, 1982, Lebanese Christian militias killed between 800 and 3,500 Palestinian refugees in the Sabra and Shatila camps in West Beirut. An Israeli Commission of Inquiry, the Kahan Commission, found Israel indirectly responsible, as its forces had surrounded the camps and allowed the militias to enter. Eyewitnesses reported that Israeli flares illuminated the camps during the night and that Israeli soldiers were present during the slaughter. Siege and shelling of Beirut, 1982. For 2 months, Israeli forces besieged West Beirut, cutting off food, water, and electricity while subjecting the city to intense aerial and artillery bombardment. An estimated 4,000 to 5,000 Lebanese and Palestinian civilians were killed. The shelling was so severe that U.S. President Ronald Reagan reportedly described it as a holocaust during a phone call with Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Use of lethal force during the First Intifada. During the first year of the uprising, over 300 Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces and settlers, most of them unarmed civilians, including more than 50 children. Israeli forces used live ammunition, plastic bullets, and beatings against demonstrators. Tens of thousands were detained in prison camps where torture and abuse were reported. Civilian killings and destruction during the Second Intifada. In less than 1 year of this uprising, Israeli forces killed nearly 600 Palestinians. Again, the vast majority unarmed civilians, with a third being children. Tactics escalated dramatically from the First Intifada, including the use of helicopter gunships, F-16 fighter jets dropping bombs on residential areas, and armored bulldozers flattening entire neighborhoods. Battle of Jenin, 2002. During Operation Defensive Shield, Israeli forces fought Palestinian militants in the Jenin refugee camp. Heavy fighting and extensive use of armored bulldozers destroyed large areas of the densely populated camp. Palestinian sources reported hundreds killed, while a UN report later estimated approximately 52 Palestinian deaths, though human rights groups criticized Israel's destruction of civilian homes. Gaza War, 2008-2009, Operation Cast Lead. A 3-week Israeli offensive in Gaza resulted in approximately 1,400 Palestinian deaths, including hundreds of civilians. The UN fact-finding mission, the Goldstone Report, documented serious violations including white phosphorus. Israeli forces used white phosphorus shells in populated areas, which poses severe burn risks to civilians. Attacks on UN facilities. Israeli forces shelled UN compounds sheltering civilians, including a school in Jabalia that killed dozens. Al-Samuni family killings, 2009. On January 5, 2009, Israeli forces shelled a house in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City, where the Al-Samuni family had gathered, killing approximately 30 family members. Survivors said Israeli soldiers had earlier ordered them to stay in the house. Operation Pillar of Defense, 2012. An 8-day Israeli military operation in Gaza resulted in over 150 Palestinian deaths, including numerous civilians. Human rights organizations documented Israeli airstrikes on civilian homes and infrastructure. 2014 Gaza War, Operation Protective Edge, a 50-day Israeli offensive that killed over 2,100 Palestinians, of whom the UN estimated 1,462 were civilians. The UN Commission of Inquiry found that Israeli forces conducted some 6,000 airstrike attacks and some 14 P-500 tank, artillery, and naval shelling attacks in densely populated areas. Shuja'iyya shelling, 2014. On July 20, 2014, Israeli artillery and airstrikes hit the Shuja'iyya neighborhood of Gaza City in one of the war's deadliest attacks, killing at least 60-70 civilians and wounding hundreds. The UN found that Israeli forces had directed strikes in populated areas without warning. Rafah bombardment, Black Friday, 2014. On August 1, 2014, following the capture of an Israeli soldier, Israel launched massive strikes on Rafah. Human Rights Watch documented that Israeli forces struck homes, medical facilities, and a market, killing at least 135 civilians, including 75 children. UN school strikes during the 2014 war. Israeli forces struck several UN-run schools sheltering displaced civilians. The deadliest was on July 24th, when a strike on a UN school in Jabalia killed at least 16 people. The UN Secretary-General called it a criminal act. 2018-2019 Gaza border protests. During the Great March of Return protests, Israeli snipers killed 189 Palestinians and wounded over 6,000, according to a UN independent commission. The commission found that Israeli soldiers shot at protesters who posed no imminent threat, including journalists, paramedics, and children, concluding that Israeli snipers may have committed war crimes. 2021 Israel-Palestine crisis. During 11 days of fighting, Israeli airstrikes destroyed residential towers in Gaza, including a building housing the Associated Press and Al Jazeera offices. Human rights groups questioned whether the strike served a legitimate military objective, given the extensive destruction of civilian infrastructure. 2023 Israel-Hamas war investigations. Since October 2023, allegations have mounted regarding strikes on hospitals, Israeli forces have raided or struck several hospitals, including Al-Shifa, Gaza's largest. Large-scale civilian casualties. As of early 2024, Gaza health authorities reported over 30,000 Palestinian deaths, the majority women and children. Siege tactics. Israel imposed a complete siege, cutting food, water, fuel, and electricity, which critics describe as collective punishment. Strike on Al-Ali Hospital area, 2023. On October 17, 2023, an explosion at Al-Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza City killed hundreds. The incident remains heavily disputed. Palestinian officials blamed an Israeli airstrike, while Israel claimed it was a failed rocket launch by Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Independent investigations have been inconclusive. Destruction of neighborhoods in northern Gaza, 2023-2024. During ground operations, Israeli forces have demolished large residential areas in Gaza City and northern Gaza. Satellite imagery analysis shows thousands of buildings destroyed, with Israeli officials describing a policy of creating buffer zones, blockade policies affecting civilians. Since 2007, Israel has maintained a land, air, and sea blockade on Gaza, restricting movement of people and goods. UN officials and human rights groups have repeatedly described the blockade as collective punishment of Gaza's 2 million residents in violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
Oh, that was a wonderful story, Grandfather Gluck. But did all of that really happen?
Yep. Hell is actually real, and Christianity was right all along. Sorry.
Oh.
Merry Christmas, everyone!